You are tuning into AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Malaysia expects to hit 10% national COVID-19 vaccination rate by mid-July. And we explore recall elections to stop party hopping and keep MPs in check. That's coming up. New COVID cases in Malaysia fell to 4,611 in the past 24 hours. The last time the nation saw under 5,000 fresh infections was a week ago. This brings the country's cumulative infections past the 700,000 mark today. Selangor continues to report the most cases with 1,346 infections, followed by Sarawak with 682 cases, Perak with 453 cases, and Negeri Sembilan 437 cases. It is to be noted that a quarter of the cases in Selangor came from workplace clusters. Out of 22 clusters recorded today, 14 were workplace related. Meanwhile, 69 deaths related to COVID-19 were reported in the last 24 hours. The target of fully vaccinating 10% of Malaysia's population against COVID-19 is expected to be achieved by mid-July. Minister in charge of the National COVID-19 Immunization Program, Khairi Jamaluddin, said this projection is based on vaccine supply as well as the capacity of vaccination centres to administer the shots. Currently, for every 100 doses administered, 30 are for those taking their second jab of vaccine. 10.7 million doses of vaccine needs to be administered to fully immunize 10% or 3.2 million of the country's population. Khairi expects to achieve that by mid-July. There are no plans to mix and match vaccines just yet. Khairi said the National Immunization Program Technical Working Committee reported inconclusive data following evaluation on mixing different vaccines, a strategy known as heterologous.
So I've asked the committee to look at heterologous vaccinations for two things. One, to see whether it's more effective. Secondly, in case ada gangguan bekalan, at least we have plan B. So I need a plan B, but so far we are still okay. Yeah, but I will update on the heterologous vaccinations after JKJAV minggu ni.
The first delivery of the CanSino vaccine doses will arrive sometime in July. However, Putrajaya has yet to receive the response from COVAX on when the Johnson & Johnson vaccine doses can be delivered to Malaysia. Meanwhile, Khairi said the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency is still in the process of evaluating Russian Sputnik V vaccine. AMNO has issued a 14-day ultimatum to the Perikatan-led government to follow the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's advice on reconvening Parliament. In a statement, AMNO President Datuk Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi said the 14 days start today.
Zahid said that it was important to reconvene Parliament to bring forth demands and hopes of the people amid the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to ensuring accountability in the government's administrative affairs. The Bagan Dato' MP said failure to do so by Perikatan Nasional would be a sign of great disrespect to the rulers. Zahid added that UMNO's Supreme Council would be meeting in the near future to finalise its next course of action on the matter. Last week, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah said that parliamentary sittings should reconvene as soon as possible to enable the emergency ordinances and the National Recovery Plan to be debated by MPs. In a separate statement, the Malay rulers also said there was no need for the nation to remain under a state of emergency after August 1st.
Recall elections is one way to address party hopping among MPs in Malaysia, according to Senior Fellow at Singapore Institute of International Affairs, Dr. Oh Ehsan. Could the system, which allows voters to remove an elected representative before the end of the term, help keep MPs in check? And is this idea feasible in Malaysia?
Nowadays, a widespread welcoming of some form of recall election, but exactly what form this recall election would take, I think that is still subject for debate. Some would say whenever an MP switches party, then his or her seats will be automatically declared subject to a recall election. Some other political analysts perhaps will be of the opinion that, perhaps not enough voters will actually mind the switching. So perhaps you should have some sort of signature petition of, let's say, 5%, 2%, 10% of the voters in this constituency asking for such a recall election.
Ihsan, however, said that bipartisan effort from both opposition and government is needed in order for recall elections to be realized in the country.
Yeah, a lot of ways to do this recall. For example, one is, of course, an automatic trigger, whereby you would have the seat declared vacant as soon as a member of parliament or even state assembly switch parties or leave a party. And then another way is, of course, for the voters in the constituencies, for example, let's say 2% or 5% of them to sign a certain petition whenever there is such a switching of political allegiance. Then you will trigger a recall election, and then depending on how you want to do it, the same candidate, the original MP, he or she could still stand in that recall election, or you could straight away disqualify that.
Recall election is a system widely used in the US, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, Switzerland, and Ukraine. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz said Malaysia's economy is improving despite COVID-19 setbacks. In an interview with CNBC, Zafrul said exports are key to Malaysia's growth as the electrical and electronics industry remain open despite the country being on lockdown.
In the first quarter, our economy improved. We have posted a GDP growth of negative 0.5%, but in March itself, it was a positive 6%. We also seen a big increase in our investments that's coming into Malaysia. Approved investment in Malaysia is up 95% in the first quarter this year compared to the first quarter of last year. And this showed that the economy is improving. Of course, there's some setbacks given that we have to lock down for the moment under phase one. Having said that, this is nothing compared to the recent or the first MCO, which was introduced in March last year. Because globally, economy is improving. At Malaysia, this time we've learned from the previous lockdown. Our key industrial sectors are still open, especially the E&E sector.
The Tourism, Arts and Culture Ministry has extended the exemption period for license renewal fee and additional licenses for tourism operators and tourist guides. This applies for those who made their application for renewal from July 1st until December 31st, 2021.
The ministry would provide the fee exemption to tourism operators and tourist guides who have yet to receive approval for license renewal due to the MCO. The fee exemption is also given to those who have obtained the approval for license renewal but were unable to make the payment due to the MCO. MOTAC said this was among the initiatives to help ease the burden of tourism industry players who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
Fokus kita sekarang adalah gelombang ketiga.
Kita lebih sukar untuk COVID menjangkit kita.
Untuk tempoh 2 minggu ini, duduk di rumah. Kalau kita boleh laksanakan PKP Kendiri dan keluarga,
saya kira insyaAllah kita boleh berjaya. Akhirnya kita menang.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Dalam kita berusaha memutuskan rantaian wabak ini, kita jangan terpedaya dengan virus maklumat palsu. Simak fakta melalui www.astroawani.com atau aplikasi Astro Awani.
Welcome back. Axiata Group and Norway's Telenor have agreed to merge their mobile operations in Malaysia in a deal valued close to 50 billion ringgit. The planned transaction, which remains subject to regulatory and other approvals, is expected to be completed by the second quarter of 2022.
Under the deal, Telenor and Axiata will each own 33.1% of the merged entity called Celcom DG Berhad, which will remain listed on Bursa Malaysia. According to stock exchange filing today, Axiata will transfer its stake in Celcom Axiata Berhad to DG.com Berhad for 17.8 billion ringgit. In return, it will get new shares and 1.7 billion ringgit in cash from DG and close to 300 million ringgit from Telenor. The merger will become the nation's largest telecom deal on record. The new entity will create Malaysia's biggest cell phone operator by subscribers at 19 million.
Indonesia will tighten restrictions in some areas for 2 weeks starting tomorrow, following a rise in COVID-19 cases. The restrictions include limiting the number of workers in offices and barring religious activities at house of worship. The curbs would apply to red zones where infections have been rising more quickly. Indonesia is facing a sharp spike in cases a month after the Aidilfitri holiday, with a detection of the more contagious Delta variant. Indonesia reported 14,536 new cases today, the highest daily increase since the beginning of the pandemic, taking its overall cases past the 2 million mark, while fatalities from COVID-19 is near 55,000. Meanwhile, Taiwan's daily domestic COVID-19 infections dropped to below 100 for the first time in more than a month. Taiwan has been tightening restrictions on social gatherings following a spike in cases. The government has been working to speed its vaccination program, which has faced supply delays. 2.5 million Moderna vaccines donated by the United States arrived in Taiwan yesterday. The doses will more than double the number of vaccines that have come to the island, including 1.24 million AstraZeneca shots donated by Japan this month. Only about 6% of its 23.5 million population have received at least one dose of the vaccine. Organizers of the Tokyo Olympics have finally agreed to allow up to 10,000 fans at its events, just weeks before opening ceremony. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga said he would not rule out holding the games without spectators if COVID-19 infections surge.
Japan has largely avoided the kind of explosive outbreaks that have devastated other countries. But its vaccine rollout has been slow and the medical system pushed to the brink in some places. Organizers said the limit for the games, scheduled to begin on July 23rd, will be set at 50% of venue capacity and up to a maximum of 10,000 people. Spectators from overseas have already been banned. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach said the vaccination rate for athletes and officials residing in the Olympic Village was now well above 80%, exceeding initial expectations.
Sweden's parliament ousted Prime Minister Stefan Löfven in a no-confidence vote today. It is the first time in Swedish history that a prime minister has been ousted in such a motion. This would give the Social Democrat leader a week to resign or call a snap election.
Sweden's small left party called for the no-confidence vote last week after a dispute over a proposal to end rent controls for new-built apartments. A total of 181 of the 349 MPs voted in favour of the motion. If the Prime Minister decides to step down, the Parliament Speaker will have to begin cross-party negotiations to form a new government, which would remain in place until general elections, which are set to take place in September next year.
What does the Johor public want from its state government, and how can those who helm the state respond more effectively? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to Menteri Besar Johor, Dato' Hasni Mohamad, on how the state government plans to chart a course to recovery from the triple crisis the nation is facing. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. I'm Saraya Mia. We'll see you again.